6.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to The Detail. I am your host, Cathy Antunes, and you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. Well, you know, in these political times, we talk here about local politics, and there's so much concern out there among all kinds of people. And one of the things that is brought up, I think, probably not often enough, is that there's far more agreement out there than we realize, and we may be being asked to focus on disagreement when the solutions to making things better may be right under our nose. And so my guest today is part of the solution. His name is John Severini. He is the head of Rank My Vote Florida. John, you live in Lakewood Ranch, and are you the executive director? Is that the title for your leadership
Yes.
here? Okay, well, welcome, John. Thank you so much. I'm actually really excited to be talking about something that can make voting and electing officials so much better for everyone. So thanks for being with me.
Oh, thank you, Cathy. Always a pleasure, first of all. You know, this is not our first interview, but I'm very happy to be back and update you and your listeners on what's going on nationally with
on where we are, and I hope it won't be the last. So,
yep.
First of all, you know, just to start out, in the United States, in Florida, there's a binary approach to voting. I think if you want to put it in those, it's black and white, win or lose, winner take all. It's like, I use analogies of children's games. It's like steal the bacon. You either win or you're a loser. And you can have 15 people competing, as we saw on the presidential primary, the Republican primary of 2016. So many candidates, over a dozen, I believe, competing. And so somebody in that field with maybe just 18% of the vote in a primary could win the whole thing. How is ranked choice voting different? Let's start there, John. Let's just describe it, because it's a game changer and is far more nuanced and gives the voter the opportunity to really define their preferences, not just pick one. So how does that work?
Okay, so that's a perfect place to start, Cathy. So yeah, I'm going to share your black or white analogy, and that is the way we vote. That's the only way. That's what we know, and that's the way we've always done it. And change is hard. However, life is not black and white. We know there are many, many shades of gray, and the unfortunate part of the voting system is you only get to pick one. If you like black, you get to pick black. If you like white, you get to pick white. But what if you like something in the middle? And there's this, you know, darker shade, but not, you know, white, and that's what happens with our candidates. There's many shades. We have extremes at both ends of our political spectrum. And quite honestly, they're the loudest. They get the most airtime because, you know what, anger gets people's ears, and so they create this dissension so that they can get your ears. And it's the quiet moderates that are in the middle that most Americans are. That's where most Americans fail. However, we're forced to vote for, if we're leaning to the dark side, we're forced to vote for the candidate is most likely to win. And it may be that really dark, you know, extreme, or the same. If you're leaning towards the light side, you know, you're put into this bucket.
Well,
so ranked choice voting
extremes on both sides, right? There are
Absolutely.
extremes on both sides. And so how does ranked choice voting kind of calm that down?
Cathy, when most elections now, there's not just two candidates, there's 3, 4, sometimes 12 or 15. In that field, you as a voter I'm sure you like multiple candidates. And maybe you like one of the candidates that has a very little chance to win. So
Yeah.
you as a voter, right? And I'll use Ralph Nader as a perfect example
Yeah,
because
he's a great
we're here in Florida.
example. Mhm.
Right. There were a lot of Ralph Nader fans, but possibly even a better election is 8 years prior to that when Ross Perot ran. And
Mhm.
Ross Perot got 19% of the popular vote, which is unprecedented. But
For an
everybody knew Ross
independent,
was
yeah, an independent
as an
candidate.
independent, as an
Yeah.
independent candidate. He was a very conservative independent, and he ran on a platform of fiscal responsibility.
Mhm.
Right? He was the only one out there talking about fiscal responsibility. At 19%, most of the people that voted for Ross, most of the people that voted for Ralph, they knew they were wasting their vote. They knew that candidate wasn't likely. They wanted them to.
Mhm.
So what this ranked choice voting allows is it allows you, if you're a supporter of a Perot or a Nader, to say, yes, this is what I like, but I have a second choice. So when they do the tabulation, I'll go into that. If Ross is not one of the winners, then your vote would transfer. If you voted for Ross Perot, then your vote would go to your second choice. And
Yeah.
that brings people, it creates this a more harmonious way of electing and plays to this really people that cross the aisle and say, I know you like that other candidate as your first choice, but consider me as your second choice. And it just changes the dynamic. So basically, ranked choice voting has, when I got involved with this in 2016, there were 12 cities in the country that approved ranked choice voting. Sarasota happened to be one of those 12. They just
Yeah.
hadn't implemented it.
Mhm.
Today, and we'll go into more detail about Sarasota, but today there are 62 cities that use it. And when the organization that's really been the spearhead of this nationally is Fair Vote, and they see a path to 500 cities adopting ranked choice voting in the next 5 years. So
Really?
think about that.
That
Yeah,
many.
500.
So the recent New York City mayoral election is an example of, ranked
Right.
choice voting that people may be familiar with. It doesn't occur quickly, right? Because it takes time to tabulate these votes. But what happens is, and I just want to pull an example up while we're talking. What happens is if your first choice doesn't make it, so like you're saying, there's no spoiler effect. People talk about the spoiler effect with a Ralph Nader or a Ross Perot. Well, you're throwing away your vote. And a lot of people feel that just out of a sense of integrity, they want to vote their conscience. They want to vote for the person they truly believe is best. So here's an example of a ballot, a ranked choice vote ballot. And essentially, here's 4 candidates for Congress. And you would get to choose who your first, your second, your third, your fourth, and even if you had a write-in, if there were write-in candidates, you could have a 5th choice. And then instead of steal the bacon, it's like musical chairs. The person who has the least amount of number ones gets eliminated. And then everyone who put that person number one, so everyone who put, let's say, Ralph Nader number one, then their second choice, either Bush or Gore, would rise, And so in that way, or with Ross Perot, everyone who put Ross Perot number one, they would choose between Clinton or George H.W. Bush. And then their second choice would rise to first choice. Just to make it really clear, it's a winnowing process, right? So the voter really gets to choose their whole slate of preference, and goodness knows it can be a game changer when that's the case, because this idea of throwing away your vote is actually, there's some validity to that, right? If they don't.
100% there is validity. Because by picking the Ralph Nader or the Ross Perot candidate, you might actually be helping the person you want least get elected because you've taken a vote away from your second choice. So can you put that slide back up? I know we're on
Oh,
radio, but I know this.
yeah. Well, and so what everyone, what I'm just showing is a list of potential candidates for Congress. And it just makes it really easy to see on a ballot. This is not complicated. You get to really decide and bubble in by preference, first, second,
So
third,
Cathy, let
fourth,
me,
fifth. Mhm.
yeah, and to your listeners that are just listening, I think this is going to be up on Cathy's website. So if you are interested, please go, because this is our biggest objection that we hear. It's
Okay.
confusing. It's confusing. Voters won't get it. And I think that's insulting to our voters, number one. In
Mhm.
life, we have choices with everything.
Yeah.
Everything you do, it's not, black or white, right? You go to the grocery store and your favorite cereal isn't on the shelf. You know what? You have a second choice and you have a
Yep.
third choice.
Mhm.
So why in our election systems don't we allow that? So here it is, folks. If you want to go to Cathy's website, you'll see a ballot. It's simple. You fill in the ovals just as you do today. But instead of just picking one, you're going to pick your first choice, second choice, third choice. You don't have to. Let me just
Yeah.
stress that.
Right.
If you only have one choice, you don't have to pick anybody else. A lot of people say, well, then it puts more pressure on voters to research other candidates. Well, I think that's a good thing. It's a great thing, actually.
Yeah. I think so
However,
too. Mhm.
if your voter doesn't, and your voter just wants to vote party line, and I don't really want to do the homework, okay, that is their choice.
Right.
But
And
why?
and a lot of times there is going to be more than one candidate in your particular camp. But I think, the power brokers that benefit from the current configuration, John, they don't want this because they know that it's a total game changer. So by allowing and by giving voters the power to register these more nuanced preferences, you can have a different outcome. I mean, if you look at what happened in Alaska, with a Democrat winning Congress, right? That was ranked choice voting, and it truly reflects the preference of the electorate. So there is, I want to share with you all a new report at the time of this airing or this recording. We're recording in December of 2022. I think this show's going to be relevant for a long time. But Integrity Florida is concerned with, the integrity of our elections, among other things, in the state of Florida. And they have issued a report. Their executive director is Ben Wilcox. And Wilcox recently issued a press release, and they issued a report. It's not that long. It's totally worth your time reading. It's called Ghost Candidates. So Ralph Nader and Ross Perot were authentic candidates. They campaigned. They had a platform. They wanted to win. What we're seeing in Florida is manipulation of our elections with ghost candidates. And what is a ghost candidate? It's a sham candidate, an extra candidate that is in there to siphon votes away from one of the legitimate candidates. So I'm going to just go to the executive summary here. In Miami, the worst example that actually changed the outcome of the election was Senate District 37 race, where the incumbent Democratic Senator Jose Javier Rodriguez lost to his Republican challenger. He was a Democrat. He lost to the Republican by 30 votes, just 30 votes. Now, what happened when I'm not sure where Senator Artiles's case is, but another Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez, was recruited, and he testified against a former state senator, Artiles, and he didn't campaign, but he was the benefit of dark money, and I believe it was data targeting. This company put out mailers or did his campaign. And what happened was he siphoned 6,000 votes. 6,000 votes were taken or put toward Alex Rodriguez. You know, he's got a name. There's Alex Rodriguez, you know, a famous baseball player. So the name recognition factor and having a candidate that would siphon votes away from the incumbent Democrat. Now, the candidate that won wasn't implicated in the scheme, but this was a clear instance. It's not the only one, but it's one where you definitely could say it changed the outcome of the election. So much so that in August of this year, longtime Democratic Congresswoman Cathy Castor called on the DOJ to investigate Florida Power and Light because they were implicated in another election scheme using dark money for a ghost candidate. So we don't know if DOJ is investigating, but Integrity Florida is supporting the call for a DOJ investigation into FPL. And this is a different set of ghost candidates, but clearly we have a problem when this kind of manipulation with a third candidate or an extra candidate can sway the outcome or deliberately confuse voters. And at least ranked choice voting would help weaken or eliminate that manipulation.
It would, Kathy, yeah. And if you don't mind, if you want to go back to the photo of the three candidates so that you started that. I haven't seen that report. But I know that election very well. So this was an extreme and heinous example of running a ghost candidate, but it happens all the time. And I will say both parties are guilty. But so in this case, Jose Rodriguez, Jose was the incumbent, right? It was going to be a close race between him and Ileana Garcia. But dark money funded this guy, Alex. It turned out Alex didn't even live in the district. That didn't come out until later. Alex never campaigned, never had any debate on stage. What the money behind Alex did was they sent out mailers to Democrats saying, Alex Rodriguez is more Democratic than Jose, and you want to vote for Alex. So it confused, or successfully confused enough Democrats, as you said, 6,000 of them, and they voted for Alex. That's 6,000 less votes that Jose would have gotten. Jose would have won this by a landslide. So Ileana was the benefit. She didn't participate. She was exonerated from that. That's fine. But you know what? She was the beneficiary. She's now represents that district that would have gone heavily Democratic. I can share with you the exact opposite of that in Illinois. Illinois, which is a very, very Democratic state, will do that, all the time. So voters, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to the party chairs is this the way you want your elections? Most voters don't even realize that that's happening.
Yeah.
Now, but that's extreme and that happens. So ranked choice voting will literally eliminate that ability because the people that funded Alex Rodriguez, they'll realize that's a failed strategy because the Alex Rodriguez voters will pick Jose for their second choice.
Right.
And no sense even going through the effort. All that money that was spent, all that dark money to fool voters, I'm sorry, shame on whoever that is behind that. People are going to go to jail for that. That is illegal. However, running a real candidate.
I have to say, we have yet to see that. I don't know.
No, that is true.
We haven't. Mr. Alex Rodriguez got, I believe, 36 months of probation and 12 months of house arrest. He had faced a possible 20-year prison sentence. That didn't happen. I'm not clear on Senator Artiles. I think his trial is yet to occur. but Alex Rodriguez was a 55-year-old auto parts salesman with no political experience. He ran as an independent. And, you know, he copped to it. He said, "You're right, I'm guilty. I did it."
Right.
Um,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there you go.
So, well, yeah, but so that's extreme. That's when how the ugly underbelly of politics, which we know is out there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
ranked choice voting eliminates that. Totally eliminates the benefit of doing it. I won't say they won't try, but your informed voter will then have a second choice. So, but let's go to the real candidates where there's multiple candidates in a race. And I sent you a link just now in your email, Cathy. I don't know if
Okay,
you
so
can
maybe
do that.
uh-huh.
Um,
You keep talking, I'll look for it.
sure. So this basically Alaska this year. Alaska is one of two states that uses ranked choice voting for all their elections. Maine is the other state. Maine was the first one. Alaska passed this in 2020, and they used it this year. And I want to show you how nicely it worked in Atlanta, in Alaska. And then just nationally, the third state to adopt it is Nevada. The state of Nevada just approved it. The voters of the state of Nevada approved ranked choice voting, and it'll be used in all of their elections. So this is on Fair Vote's website, fairvote.org, and they've literally been the national force behind this. But right here, let's look at this.
Yeah.
This was the race for the U.S. House of Representatives in Alaska. There were 4 candidates. All of these are real, legitimate. There's no ghost candidate here. All right. What happened? Well, what happened was Mary Pelota. I always I'm challenged with her.
Peltola, I think.
Peltola. Thank you.
Yeah.
A very independent, centrist Democrat. And Alaska leans right. They lean right. I won't say hard, but they haven't put a Democrat in the House of Representatives in more than 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she was running. She's a Native American, and she was running against Sarah Palin, who's a more extreme Republican, which I think most of your voters know, and then Nick all right, help me out with Nick's name.
Begich, maybe, and Chris Pye. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. So what happened here? Well, a lot of people would say, well, the Republicans, unfortunately, Sarah and Nick were both Republicans. They're going to split the vote. And they did, helping Mary to win. Well, guess what? That actually did play out. Those Republicans kind of almost evenly split the vote. And if you look at the graph, however, Nick, who got the least number of votes, Nick's voters had a second choice, and they could have picked Sarah Palin, but they didn't. They didn't, because she was too extreme for them. So they picked Mary. So if this were a plurality race, Mary would have won because she had the most votes after the first round. But I could see a lot of Republicans saying, well, it's not fair because we had 2 candidates in the race and they split the vote, and there's more Republicans in our side. Well, guess what, Republicans? Your voters had a chance to express their preference, and they did, and they picked Mary. So Mary increased.
Yeah.
A lot of them went to, you see how that played out, Cathy? So
well, I do. And the bottom line is, so here, Sarah Palin got 45% of the vote, and Mary Peltola got about 55% of the vote. And then these 2 other candidates, because they were eliminated, you don't necessarily see, but it's obvious that they pulled about 10% that was then reallocated, right? Like the difference between Peltola and Palin is about 10%. And with 2 other candidates in the mix, what happens is that 10% isn't just gone, isn't lost. It's then reallocated when it's clear that they don't have enough to carry the day. Then their votes get redistributed according to the preference of the voter. and
Right.
and that's the game changer. So someone like Sarah Palin, who I would say, I don't think she's a conservative. I think a lot of people recognize there's an extremism. I would call it reactionary. I wouldn't call it conservative. There's an extremism out there that that people aren't comfortable with, you know?
Right.
And so they'd
Right.
rather go with somebody more moderate, and ranked choice voting really teases that out and makes that, you know, come to fruition. It's very
So if we
interesting.
can, yeah, well, actually, Kathy, you nailed it in theory, but honestly, if you look at the first round, eliminate the pink on the graph. If you look at the
Oh,
first
okay.
round, Sarah and Nick got almost a third of the vote each. Mary, after the first round, you see the dotted line. That's
Mhm.
where Mary was after the first round. So she would have won. She had significantly more support than either Sarah or Nick. But if you
Oh,
combine Nick, you see how that played out?
well,
So
what's
when Nick was
interesting, so I need
eliminated,
to stop you because a lot of the time they say with ranked choice voting, if you get 50% plus one in the first round, then and in the primary, let's say, or the first round, then you win. Is that
right?
not the case in Alaska? It sounds
No,
like they do something different.
no, it is the case in Alaska. Mary did not get 50% in the
Okay.
first round.
Okay.
She was under 50, right?
Okay.
I think it was 41 or 43%. But
Okay.
after second place voters and votes were transferred, then she ultimately wound up with almost 55%. Um, but here's the fun part. If you scroll down on your
Okay.
email there, so in that race, a Democrat won. Now here's their Senate race. Again,
This is
nobody had
So
50%.
I'm talking radio here. Murkowski versus Shabaka, right? So Lisa Murkowski, the moderate senator from the state of Alaska, was really under, people wondered if she would survive. But what
Right.
you're saying is now, because of ranked choice voting, there were 4 candidates in the mix in November, and Murkowski carried 54% of the vote. So go ahead, John. Tell
Yeah.
us your analysis.
So again, if you eliminate the pink, because the pink is where votes were reallocated after the bottom 2 candidates were eliminated.
Okay, so
So
these are pink bars. You'd have to go to the YouTube video to see, but these are the votes that had to be reallocated, right? These are
correct.
reallocated votes. Okay.
So Kelly, you see how close it was at the end of the first round. If you look at Kelly and Lisa, they were almost neck and neck. Lisa was just a fraction ahead of Kelly, but nobody had 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was the last place candidate, which is Buzz, was eliminated, and they reallocated Buzz's votes, and some went to
This
Lisa,
is
some went to Kelly,
Buzz
but still
Kelly.
nobody had 50%. And then they eliminate the next person in last place, which was Patricia.
Mhm.
And
That's
her
right.
votes transferred, and you could see Lisa picked up the lion's share. It put Lisa well over 50%. It showed the true preference, but it allowed the Buzz supporters and the Patricia supporters to show their true, person of interest, but then gave them a
Right.
second choice. So
Right.
at the end of the day, a Republican won that. Lisa Murkowski, a moderate Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go to the next one, and you'll see the governor's race. And the governor of Alaska won in the first round. So, but it was the last one. It didn't even have to go to the runoff, although ranked choice was used.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting part of that is it was Delaney is the incumbent, and he won with just over 50%.
Yeah.
But there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 others and some write-ins, but 3 other candidates.
Yeah.
So had Delaney not gotten the 50%, and it was close, then the Walker or the other voters votes would have transferred.
So
Anyway,
this is very interesting. the people in Alaska didn't go in the voting booth and go, oh my gosh, it's so confusing. I have no idea what to do. Woe is me. They didn't do that, did they?
Yes, so
But-
Kathy, thank you. That is the knock. People aren't going to get it.
Mhm.
Now we have 62 cities that use ranked choice voting, and now 3 states. All exit polls show voters not only like it, they rank candidates. If you were confused, the odds are you wouldn't rank. They
Yeah.
don't have any higher incident of spoiled ballots. People don't make mistakes at any higher rate than they do on the same ballot that you use today. And at the end of the day, after they use it the first time is always a little awkward. Like
Mhm.
everything else, you're a little confused. After they use it once, they come out and they say, that was easy. And guess what? I liked it and I want to do it again. And I
Yeah.
will tell you, 90%, the polling on that is off the charts favorable after people use it.
Well,
Before they use it, there is some trepidation. So going into those
okay.
elections,
If you're
yeah.
just joining me, my guest today is John Severini. He is the executive director of Rank My Vote Florida. You are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. If drinking is no longer fun for you and separates you from other people, you can attend an AA meeting. They've been there. For more information, call 941-951-6810 or go online to aasrq.org. Okay, so I want to talk a little more about Florida and the country, and then kind of bring it down to what's gone on in Florida, because people who like the all or nothing, win or lose, they like the ghost candidates, they want to have the spoilers, they're not giving up easily at all. But
Right.
ranked choice voting is happening. It's beginning to happen all over the country. So we're looking at Ballotpedia. Got to give props to Ballotpedia. They are, it's a fabulous website if you want to get information on what's going on in different elections. So I want to pull it down to, there was to be a Florida election, general election constitutional amendment they reference that was not on the ballot. Can you tell us anything about that to implement ranked choice voting? Is that just something that was in process or never got off the ground? What happened?
Yeah, it was it never got off the ground, Kathy. It wasn't funded. It was really a misguided attempt, and it just
Well,
fizzled.
it was not properly supported. I don't think it's so it wasn't an effective attempt. But let's take a look at the map of the country and look at there's if you're looking at this, there's orange states and blue states. The orange states have actually implemented some form of ranked choice voting, and the blue states are have it on the books but haven't implemented yet. However, this is obviously old for a number of reasons. One is Alaska's blue and it should be orange. But let me just give you a list of states so people can really realize that this is a movement that's happening. So Maine is implementing ranked choice voting. I believe that's Vermont. Is that Vermont next to New York?
Yes, the city,
okay.
Burlington, Vermont, the city of Burlington.
Burlington, Vermont. New York, we saw the mayor's race. Michigan. And is that Illinois?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, sorry. I got okay. Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, California, Alaska, all implemented, and Maryland as well. Then we're looking at, okay.
I was going to say Virginia,
Tennessee, Oregon, and Florida. And actually it was the city of Sarasota passed ranked choice voting in Florida. We can pull down the list here. adopted but not implemented in Sarasota. And that actually, we had a real sea change with ranked choice voting in the state of Florida. Why don't you share what happened this year in the state legislature? I'll pull it back up, but tell me what happened.
Well, before I go to Florida, Kathy, if you don't mind, go back to the national map, because I do want to, because that's a little dated and there's actually more colors to add to this.
Okay.
So yeah, Maine has been using it for 4 years, and I just want you to know the political party that was in charge in Maine, it was the Republican Party, fought tooth and nail to fight and block that from being implemented. The voters had to pass it 3 times, went to the voters 3 times. The legislature kept saying, and they kept throwing up obstacles and no, and they put a roadblock. It went back to the citizens. They said yes. And they put up another roadblock and it went back a 3rd time. And then finally the Maine Supreme Court said, you know what, you can't block this anymore. So God bless you, Maine. God bless you, the activists there, because it was a long, hard fight.
Yeah.
I hope we don't have to do that in Florida.
Well,
but yeah, I know.
From your lips to God's ears, John. Okay.
You do what you have to do. So you're showing Vermont in blue. Vermont actually is yellow now because they are using it in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay.
You're showing Virginia in blue. So this map is dated. Virginia actually used it. This is a great story, Kathy. The Republican Party of Virginia used it in their primary to select who was going to go on to the general for governor.
Okay.
Virginia has not elected a Republican governor in 25 years until this year. They because of ranked choice voting and the Republican Party, they nominated a moderate Republican, and thanks to ranked choice voting, out of a field of like 10.
We might want to say relatively moderate, but
relatively moderate. Okay.
If you look at the school board stuff, you might not think he's moderate, but your point is well taken. He was not the extreme of the field.
Correct. There could have been there, and so anyway, because this has become a partisan issue and it shouldn't be, but the point is, it elects the person that most of the voters support. And, and we talked about all that. Anyway, now Virginia is using it. So Tennessee is on your map in blue. I don't know why it's in blue. It should be yellow because it's been used for years, dozens of years.
Okay.
For overseas voters.
This is the Ballotpedia map. Okay.
Yep.
And then tell me about Oregon.
Yep, we can add Oregon and the state of Washington. So, the state of Washington just Seattle, the city of Seattle just approved it. Far and away the largest city in the state of Washington. Oregon, the city of Portland is using it, and I think 1 or 2 others, and I'm not positive. California, at least 10 cities in the state of California, and they're working towards statewide adoption. And of course, Alaska should be yellow as well. They've used it in Alaska.
Now there is one very sad change, and it concerns all Floridians. So Florida is blue on this map. This map is from April of 2021, but in the spring, the state legislature made a change, and they basically outlawed ranked choice voting in the state of Florida. Yeah,
no, basically about it. They said nope, you're not doing it. So here's the background on that. And I certainly have my ideas as to why they outlawed it, but they have never come out publicly and really made a comment.
Well, they just want this to quietly die, right? They don't want people to actually understand why it was killed. Yeah. So that's my take.
As we you're being kind. As we discussed, ranked choice voting has been adopted in 62 different cities. And the reason it works so nicely in cities, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one, is that many cities run their elections for their mayor and their city council, and they're nonpartisan. You're not running as a Democrat. You're not running as a Republican. You're running as Cathy Antunes, and I want to do this for my city.
Yeah.
All right. But there are, and there are many people that enter those races. So the city has the autonomy to decide how they want to run their elections. And Sarasota, as many other cities, decided that the 2-round runoff. We don't want somebody winning with 20% of the vote, in a very loaded field. So what they do is, and to their credit, they have a second election and a runoff. So the top 3 will go to a runoff.
Yep.
And then either 1 or 2 will win, depending
This
on.
happened in the city of Sarasota, right?
So the really negative part of that, it's a better way to elect, but it forces your citizens to go back to the polls a second time. It's hard enough to get people out the first time.
Right.
If your candidate didn't win and didn't make the runoff, a lot of those voters just sit out. I'm not going to go back a second time and vote for somebody that I'm just okay with. The person I wanted didn't make the run. So you get a much lower voter turnout in the runoff. It costs the city in Sarasota $100,000, in Jacksonville $1.2 million, in New York City $14 million to run their second election. They have to set up all those polling places. They have no idea how many people are going to come out. And right. So, and they put all the infrastructure in, and it costs the candidate that whole process of running a second campaign, going out and raising money, going back to all your donors. Thank you for that first check. Now give me more, because now I made the runoff and you want me to run it, right?
It's very inefficient. Yeah.
It's very inefficient. But ranked choice combines those 2 into one. And in Sarasota at the time, it was called instant runoff. It allows you to go to the poll once. The city only has to conduct 1 election. You as the voter, this is my first choice. But if, Cathy doesn't make it, this is my second choice and this is my third choice. And then instantly, tabulates. So you don't have to do that runoff election. Think of the state of Georgia.
Yeah. I have to interject. So in the city of Sarasota, the only place in Florida that passed ranked choice voting. That's why Florida is on the map, right? 2007. So I voted in this election, 75%. This was not controversial. 75% of people voting supported ranked choice voting. Wasn't even close. So to your point, all those arguments about, hey, it's 1 election, you get your result right away, you don't have to have a runoff, this saves money, this saves time and effort for everybody, right? And you're not having to go out there and hold your hand out again to be supported. The voters in Sarasota totally said, yeah, this is what we want. And it'd been on the books, until, this year. I mean, it's part of our charter in the city of Sarasota.
So actually, Cathy, it was 77% voter support.
Really? Wow.
77.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Unprecedented. There were 3 other things being voted on in that election, and the next highest one got about 50% support. So far and away, people just said, yes, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and I will point out, in 2007, there were only 11 other cities around the country that had approved it. So it was still pretty much of an unknown thing. So kudos to you and all the other voters in Sarasota. You are ahead of your time. So I will tell you that because of that election, we put a lot of pressure on the Secretary of State's office to certify it so that we could finally use it. And we weren't getting anywhere. The Secretary of State's office was very good at saying, well, we'll get back to you. And they, for 3 years, they got, they obstructed
They put you
answer.
on hold for 3 years.
Yeah, they put us on hold
Pretty
for 3
much.
years. We had some very influential attorneys, and they finally did get an answer. But in the process, we also got the city of Clearwater to say, we want to do this. the city of Gainesville to say, we want to do this, and another small city on the East Coast, and I'm forgetting their name.
Okay, yeah.
But our theory was, you know what? If we have multiple cities, maybe we, have a little, it would resonate a little more with the Secretary of State.
Mhm.
They're like, you know what, Sarasota. But now we have multiple cities saying, yes, we all want to do it. So with that, they never answered our question. They basically they kept saying it was illegal. It was illegal. We pointed, conclusive evidence that cities could run their own elections as long as it didn't conflict with state law. And at the end of the day, what did they do? They changed the law. So
Yeah,
at the end of the day, they basically said, well, yeah, you're right.
they
I
outlawed.
guess we'll just change the
Yeah.
law.
They
So
outlawed it, excuse me, they outlawed ranked choice voting at the very time when FPL, Florida Power and Light, a major donor, has been implicated in, and certainly in this Integrity Florida report, calling on the DOJ to investigate ghost candidates that were supported through dark money by, with donations from FPL. They did this at a time when you've got this Miami candidate, Alex Rodriguez, who completely confessed to being recruited to run as a ghost candidate and impacted the outcome, siphoned 6,000 votes in Senate District 37 from the Democratic incumbent, whose last name is also Rodriguez, to the Republican challenger. And to your point, look, no party has clean hands here, right? Parties are inherently, they're not necessarily about the integrity of the system. They're about winning their elections, and they're going to look to exploit, and we've seen it in Florida, any avenue to get their advantage, right? Whether it's gerrymandering or, this ghost candidate situation. So the Florida legislature, instead of taking the high road and saying, hey, we have a problem here, let's create better competition. Let's let all voices be heard. Let's let the marketplace of ideas, which they'll talk about from time to time. But if you really want the marketplace of ideas to flourish, then you're for ranked choice voting. That is not what they did. They buried this. They banned it, and now they want you not to know that they did it. They just want it to quietly die. But that's not the case around the country.
Yes, so it was inserted into a bill, which the bill was on a fast track to be passed, and it was just Senate Bill 52, Senate Bill 524.
Okay. What was that one about? Do you remember?
Yeah, the biggest thing was the election police, election integrity. Yeah.
Oh, that's poetic. Okay, great.
Yeah, election integrity. That bill did a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, some good, not much, not whatever.
Yeah,
you know what?
I
But
know.
it was just, it was one little 2 paragraphs put in a 70-page document. And we went to all the legislators that would listen to us to try to get ranked choice pulled out of that. And everyone said, I don't even know what ranked choice is. I have no opinion on this, but we can't, the powers to be said vote yes, and we're voting yes. And so
we saw a discussion, John, in the city of Sarasota, because I served on the charter review board where ranked choice voting came up. It's just part of our charter. Not that we weren't going to change anything about it, but we saw our city commissioners, and I want to speak again to no party's hands are clean here. There was a 4-1 vote in support of going to a judge to get a declaratory judgment in favor of ranked choice voting and start implementing it. And I think the mayor of Clearwater, or a commissioner, actually came down and was talking to the city commission. It was our mayor at the time, Hagan Brody, a Democrat, who said, no, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. And then a week or two later, Eric Arroyo, who is just the last mayor said, well, I'm kind of changing my mind. He's a Republican. I'm not sure how this is going to play out. My reading of the tea leaves is they were pulled aside by the state legislators who knew what they were cooking and what was going to be coming down the pike to say, look, can you just not do this? We're going to kill it anyway. That's my opinion. So
You're 100% right on that, Kathy. And yeah, that's the way it went down. So, and it was both the mayor of Clearwater that spoke at that meeting to our city commissioners, and also a vice mayor of Gainesville also made a plea. But it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, at the end of the day, the state was going to ban it anyway. So even if our local commissioners had supported it, but water under the bridge, Kathy. And I just want to say,
yeah,
it's a shame. All right. Our Republican legislature runs on fiscal responsibility and by eliminating the ability for cities. Now, nobody's saying you had to, but for cities that wanted to, chose to, it would have eliminated a runoff. It would have saved the voters of Sarasota $100,000. It would save the voters of Jacksonville $1.4 million, Gainesville $600,000, Clearwater $400,000. It adds up, right?
oh yeah.
And and guess what? Republicans aren't winning in those city elections anyway. So I'm not sure what the underlying motive was. I'm just going to go with they didn't have enough information, and they erred on the side of we like the status quo. And
well,
why
I'm going to go you one further, because there was an article I read a few years ago when Nikki Fried won as the agricultural commissioner in the state of Florida. And what that article was discussing is that there was a Republican legislator, or former legislator actually, who said that the only reason Nikki Fried won was because the Republicans didn't field a third candidate. In other words, elections in Florida, now I know it's changed recently, but historically they're very close. And the reason, that there is a strategic, and I'm not saying it's just as to your point, both parties can do this, but he was very clear in saying that Fried, if they had run a spoiler candidate as a strategy, they don't believe she would have won. He said, this was our error. We know this works. We didn't do it. And that's why Nikki Fried won. I was like, oh, okay. Well, you're being honest anyway. What about the strategy? So,
all right. So
yeah.
The truth is, I guess I want to appeal to the voters, because neither party is embracing this. And, Kathy, I guess I could make a really good case to the Democratic Party of Florida. Consider it for your primaries, right? Had ranked choice voting been used in 2000, Ralph Nader voters would have gone to Al Gore. Al Gore would have beat George Bush, right? I mean, what better rationale? However,
well, I think
look at
the governor's race in 2018 in Florida. You had Andrew Gillum, Gwen Graham, and there was one other or two other candidates. And I think, with that big of a field, Gillum won, and the ultimate election with DeSantis was quite close. However, he might not have won. I mean, it might have been Graham. She might have been everybody's, if not first, second choice. She might have had actually more support. So
correct.
Yeah.
And there were in that primary, Gwen Graham came very, very close to Gillum. That was a neck and neck. Gillum just eked her out in the primary. I think there were 7 or 8 other candidates on that ballot.
Okay.
Yeah, and absolutely Gwen Graham would have probably gotten more second place votes, and she would have been their choice. So it would have been Gwen Graham against DeSantis in the general. We can't look back. Kathy, I don't want to look back. All right. No. We have to look forward. The question to your voters, to your listeners, are you happy with the system the way it is? Is this the way you think America should run their elections and their democracy? If you're not happy, and even if your candidate won, but isn't it ugly how ugly these campaigns get? I have to turn off TV during campaign season. The negative attack ads. Ranked choice voting makes your candidate say, okay, if I'm not your first choice, at least consider me your second. It changes the dynamic. It changes the tone.
Mhm.
It makes America less divisive. And guess what? At the end of the day, it picks people with more than 50% support. So these extreme candidates that win with 30% support, that means 70% of the voters in that didn't pick them.
Mhm.
So is
Mhm.
that democracy? No, that's the way we run our democracy. There's a
Right.
better way. Right now, 3 states have adopted it. There are 5 more states that are seriously looking at statewide enactments. I think next year we'll see Minnesota be the next state
Wow.
and that will go to their legislature because they do not have a citizens ballot initiative. The state of Oregon, the state of Ohio, the state of Wisconsin. And they're red states, and they're blue states, and they're purple states. And I will go to the state of Utah. I said there were 62 cities. Guess what? 23 of them are in the state of Utah. Utah,
Okay.
a very red state, has totally embraced ranked choice voting. They used it in their Republican GOP primaries, and they've been using it for years with great
Mhm.
success. The states of Massachusetts, Montana, and possibly New Mexico are maybe 3 to 5 years away, but they're active
Statewide. Yeah.
statewide enactment, right?
Okay. Okay.
It's
Because some of them are already doing it,
in
in
cities.
some cities. Yeah, that's great.
Right.
Well, we
Yeah,
just have a few minutes left.
yeah,
You know, I talk about the past because you need to know the past to understand the present. But this is a fabulous idea that's working around the country, empowering voters and getting candidates that truly have broad support into public office. What should people be doing or thinking about if they want to support this here in Florida?
well, first of all, educating people, because I can walk the street today and 6 out of 10 people won't know what ranked choice voting is. 10 years ago or 6 years ago when I started, it would have been 9 out of 10. So we're making progress. But what
Okay.
we need people to understand it. Once people understand it and you show them a ballot, all of a sudden they say, that makes all the sense in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then when the time comes, when we go to the voters and say, do you want to do this through the ballot initiative process? Or the preferred route would be to get the legislator to say, yes, let's undo the ban, at least allow cities to
Right.
try it,
Yes.
right? That would be the
Mm-hmm.
preferred process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, we need voters to go to their legislators
Yeah.
and elect people that support it. I'm going to, self-serving here, but we're the only organization in Florida that is actively promoting it. So I'll ask your listeners to visit our website, put your name in, because the more supporters we have, the more clout we have with our elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
We need money. I would say if this moves you, please do your
Yeah.
homework on it. But
Yeah.
please donate. We've just hired our first full-time employee, and we can't do
Okay.
this on.
All right.
Yeah,
So I'm
we,
looking, thank you so much, John. If you want to change American democracy, this is certainly a way that is more inclusive and brings candidates into a far more congenial atmosphere to run. And so, John, thank you so much for your work. You all have been listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5, LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. If drinking is no longer fun for you and separates you from other people, you can attend an AA meeting. They've been there. For more information, call 941-951-6810 or go online to aasrq.org. Thank you all for listening. Stay tuned for more public affairs programming here on WSLR and make it a great day.